FBI national standard. With what we currently have right now at 27, and I say 27 because Chief Quesada, through our policies and procedures, is designated as the administrative overseer, otherwise known as the chief executive officer, who fulfills our organizational obligation establishing patrol. At 27, we're at a number of 1.8. This is gross negligence when it comes to the safety of our town. Ironically, in the midst of a national staffing crisis, as fewer men and women are choosing to come into the law enforcement career, we are fortunate enough that the lack of eligible qualified candidates in Swampscott is not the case. A mindful and very sound process agreed upon by the town administrator, town legal counsel, and our union has embraced the Swampscott Police Department since October of 21, placing this agency in the forefront of the 21st century of policing. The town of Swampscott, recognized as a national expert, hired Chief Dave Kurz from MRI to oversee our procedure. Dave Kurz is a residential expert on small-town policing organizations. Chief Kurz is a published contributor to President Obama's 6 Pillars for 21st Century Policing, and ironically, this week, Chief Kurz is scheduled to present our template that we developed here in Swampscott at the headquarters of the International Association of Chiefs of Police. Working collaboratively with the U.S. Bureau of Justice Assistance and establishing our selection procedures as the national standard for excellence. Yes, Swampscott has gone national. Chief Kurz evaluated, reviewed, and implemented policies within the Swampscott Police Department with the objective to create diversity, inclusivity, and as we fostered the first non-civil service process in this town, we produced several highly qualified candidates. After hundreds of hours, careful consideration, and thousands of tax dollars, several candidates were vetted, interviewed, and recommended in February by Chief Kurz for employment and presented by the Swampscott Police Department to the administration. Our innovative process engaged community stakeholders. The interview process that they all unanimously endorsed the same candidates. Not satisfied with these highly regarded candidates, administration demanded that we do a second, broader pool of candidates, who then again were vetted and interviewed, and ultimately the same amount of dollars, the same candidates that were previously vetted were sent forward, along with an additional candidate from that group. Please understand that if these highly recommended candidates were hired, the graduating police academy class that they should have been administered in, or set to, would be graduating sometime in October, which means that they would be ready for the streets of Swampscott in July of 2023. It takes 8 months for a candidate to graduate and clear field training before they can have an impact on the police force. When Chief Quesada joined the department, he too reviewed and endorsed the candidates and presented those same candidates for employment. Chief Kurz and Quesada have an experience of a combined 60 years in professional policing administration. After presenting candidates to the administrator, only one candidate was given a conditional offer. Months passed, and a second candidate was given an offer on June 22nd. The administrator said that these candidates are qualified and remain on our eligible list, which confirms that they are exceptional, and these candidates should be hired. Despite this, our administration wants to have another testing process again. The town continues to systematically cut and defund the Swampscott Police Department, while other town departments are having vacancies filled and their work-life balance adjusted to relieve the difficulties that they have endured. We are tirelessly working below the provided best services possible, and we continue to operate below the appropriate staffing levels, even as the population, frequency, and service of calls in Swampscott continue to grow. At a minimum, our department will continue to be understaffed for the next 12 months. The Finance Committee on the 11th of July, it was reported the police department was down only 2 officers, and that it was only a recent deficit that affected the department. That is simply not the case, as I previously stated. In August of 2021, Chief Kurz pointed out to the town in a public forum that the SPD was down 4 officers. We are now down 2 more after the recent retires, and 1 officer rescinded his retirement papers weeks ago at the fear of putting the rest of us in jeopardy. We have continuously been advising the administration since October of 2019 that our agency is understaffed. The response and refusal to hire until we left civil service. We all accepted this, and the premise was the understanding that our policy, when ready to enact, and once the separation was formalized, would continue as forward and as necessary. On September 30th of 2021, an email correspondence with Chief Kurz, Senator Brendan Crichton, and the town administrator, who writes, "Senator, we had a critical juncture with our staffing shortages and need your help and leadership to move this legislation forward." It was done after the policies were agreed upon. Our biggest fear of leaving civil service was the manipulation from administration not to have the hiring process fully successful, and that's the case. In the same email exchange that I just specifically spoke, town administrator said to Senator Crichton, "I spoke with Chief Kurz and Chief Archer today, and I want you to understand that I will support their recommendations for the negotiated policies for the recruitment and promotions. Yet as of today, we have not successfully met our 32 obligation. We are requesting that all recommended candidates presented be considered and hired. It should be noted that the process was subject of a comprehensive debriefing. A memo requested by Chief Casada, written by Chief Dave Kurz and Captain Joe Cable. This memo and report was at the direction of the administrator. As a result, our chief does not have the ability to move forward anyone. No one has higher expectation or excellence for the Swampscott Police Department than the men and women who are actually working for it. We uphold an integrity and character clause that is second to none. We are concerned about the singular voice that's conveying misinformation, and at the aftermath of leaving civil service, we find ourselves in jeopardy. It is in the interest and the welfare of the town, as the way in which we have been operating as of now is not sustainable. The burden of the health and well-being is now in your hands. I ask you to do something. We are simply trying to serve the community with love, compassion, professionalism, and empathy. Please allow us to continue to prioritize public safety. It is the job that we have grown to love and we deserve to have. We have taken an oath and we've sworn to protect that. Thank you. If I could add, just so you know, I have the job posting and application that MRI drafted from the information provided to the town that was delivered by MRI and PERF, a Professional Police Executive Research Form, and it states, the Swampscott Police Department is operating with a budget of $4.1 million and is an accredited department with 32 sworn police officers and 1.5 staff supporting a diverse and engaged community. As I have expressed, we are at 27. I'll leave that advertisement here as well, and I'll also leave the email exchange as well with Senator Brendan Crichton. Thank you for your time.
If I could, Mr. President Reen, you don't present facts here tonight. You present some political opinions that frankly undermine the integrity of good government. The Swampscott Police Department has 20 full-time patrolmen.
Can you name them?
Yes. Steve Caruso, Michael Serino, Brendan Reen, Jonathan Loit, Justin Bragan, Michael Chandler, Justin Nestor, Francis Delano, Todd Nottingham, Kevin Reen, Kevin DiNapoli, John Cassidy Jr., Michael Kenyon, John Hogan, Thomas Lucas, and Brian Wilson. We have 2 vacancies in those ranks. And we have 2 conditional offers that we have presented over the last 6 weeks for those 20 full-time positions. We also have 6 full-time sergeants. No, I'm going to finish. You had a chance. We have 6 full-time sergeants. Jonathan Locke, Michael Bowden, Steve Luck, Matthew McDonald, Richard Alix, Candace Doyle. She's an acting sergeant. We also have 4 lieutenants, Gary Lord, Bill Waters, Tom Hennessy, Michael Frailer. We have 1 captain, Joe Cable. We have 1 sworn chief. That's 32 sworn officers.
You're wrong.
Okay.
I'm going to read you the list that we're currently staffing with, and I will count them off. And if I could have a brother officer count the number as I move forward. Justin Nestor, 1. John Hogan, 2. Michael Kenyon, 3. Michael Chandler, 4. John Cassidy Jr., 5. Todd Nottingham, 6. Justin Bragan, 7. Keegan DiNapoli, 8. John Lloyd, 9. Kevin Reen, 10. Brendan Reen, 11. Mike Serino, 12. Tom Lucas, 13. Candace Doyle, 14. Brian Wilson, 15. Savario Caruso, 16. Francis Delano, 17. Rick Alix, 18.
He's a sergeant.
It's a force. Matt McDonald,
19.
Michael Bowden,
21.
Steve Luck,
21.
Jay Locke,
22.
Mike Frailer,
23.
Tom Hennessy,
24.
William Waters,
25.
Gary Lord,
26.
Captain Cable,
27.
plus Chief Casada.
28.
I think my math is correct, sir. We are not at 32 sworn police officers. If you want to insist that you have 2 ready officers that are 1 ready officer who's assigned to an academy,
You have 2
a second.
conditional offers. You don't have.
We have one
vacancies.
ready. We have 1 ready officer who is assigned to the police academy starting August 1st, the first ROC in Linfield. I'm the lead PT instructor and have that attendance list. We have a second candidate who was given a conditional offer, John Posada, who just finished his medical requirements, to which I am trying to get him into this August academy. That would be the second.
Are those positions vacant?
Yes.
No, they are.
Can I ask you?
Conditional offers.
Are those positions?
Can you fill positions that you have conditional offers accepted for?
Can I ask
No,
you?
you can't. We have.
Why can I? This is a public comment, correct, sir?
It is a public.
Can I ask you a question, sir?
Sure. Go ahead.
Do we have 32 sworn police officers as recommended by Post and Police Reform, duly enacted July 1st of
You have
2021?
32 full-time equivalent positions. You have.
Sir, you have
2
not answered.
vacancies.
You did not answer the
You
question.
have 2 vacancies.
Listen, sir,
Kevin,
I am not here to debate 2 + 2 =
Look,
5.
you have.
I'm telling you what our roster states, and I ask you, the select board, if you would like a copy of this roster, I will provide it to you. These are the only people that can work in this town at this moment.
Kevin, you're on the front page of today's paper.
I appreciate
This
that.
is, I'll read your quote. We have 16 patrolmen, 5 sergeants, 4 lieutenants, 1 captain, and 1 chief, making it 27. You don't have,
Can I ask why this is not?
you
why
don't
this is
have
wrong?
5 sergeants. We have 6 sergeants,
Can
Can I
we have an
interject
acting
here,
sergeant.
please?
So,
Can I please
Officer
interject
Ring.
to
Please,
say
ma'am.
that not too long ago, there were folks in the audience who reminded us on the board to speak to each other with love and respect, and I would hope that you two can do the same.
Thank you,
So
Ms.
if
Fallon. I
could please
appreciate that.
lower your tones and speak to each other respectfully.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may continue. There are 28 people that enter the building in the Swampscott Police Department. Per requirement of Post, a person who is not duly sworn as an officer is not considered an officer until they take that oath. I understand that the administrator may be suggesting that those vacancies are filled. That's fantastic. I hope that 3 more are filled. In the event of that, we have a sergeant who withdrew his retirement papers, and there are 2 more who are eligible to retire March 2nd of 2023. We are going to be at a consistent loss as we progress forward. Town advertised 32 sworn police officers. The flow chart that the administrator may be showing might also have an animal control officer or police administrative assistants. An animal control officer cannot respond to your 911 call. The only one who can respond to a 911 call is a sworn police officer. So even if a candidate has a conditional offer, they have no impact on the town until 8 months after, if 8 months, after they start the police academy. Our first conditional offer has not started the police academy. I'm not here about semantics on numbers. I'm asking about why did it take until now that we're looking at one offer and then an additional second offer, but yet we're still down 3. We have been established, and it's been documented in years past, 32 sworn police officers.
So, look, Kevin, you're retreading some of the ground. I want to address a couple points.
Sean, can we, let's wrap this up. I don't think it's
I think
great
it's
for us to
grossly
have personnel.
unfair and grossly inappropriate for you to suggest that there's negligence here and that somehow, in some way, you know, the union didn't have information about the type of process and the type of officers that we were looking to hire. I've sent emails to you. I've provided you with detailed information about what we're looking for. We have a test. Frankly, we had that test
December 18th.
A few days before the holidays. We had 40 individuals come and take that test, and frankly, we didn't get the type of turnout that I was expecting. I'd like to have another test. I've asked Chief Casada and frankly talked to Chief Kurz about making sure we get another test out there so that we can get more applicants sooner and help engage communities that we haven't been able to reach out to apply for these jobs. These are important jobs.
Are you suggesting that we didn't do that?
I absolutely think we can do a better job, and I think, you know, the work that we've done, frankly, needs to reach out. And I've talked to you about going to colleges and universities, sending staff from Swampscott to different places. We need to get that test back up on a calendar before the holidays.
If I may
Respectfully, can we wrap this up? I don't think
Chairman
we should
Duffy,
be
if I could
trying-
respond to this, and I'll be finished for the night.
Please do.
Thank you. To that, I have not seen the reports in exclusive that were given to you, but I've been offered that they have specifically, in detail, expressed how diligent our process is. I know that you have them. I expect that you'll finish reading them, and I expect that you'll come to the same conclusion that we have outsurpassed any imagination whatsoever. And the person that's presenting today, this week, at the International Chiefs of Police Association on a national level, our template, who is nationally recognized as the expert, also believes that we did too. I thank you for your time. Have a good night.
Thank you.
What was that, Brendan? What did you say?
Sean,
Please
Sean.
stop.
Please.
Sean.
Stop.
Any more public comment?
Looks like there's a hand raised.
If there's a hand raised on Zoom, Cynthia Tennant.
Hi.
Hello, Ms. Tennant.
Hi. I am Cynthia Tennant. I am the resident commissioner on the board of the Swampscott Housing Authority. I am the vice president of the Swampscott Senior Tenants Association. I have lived in Swampscott since November 25th, 1947. I think I know a little bit about the town. There is something very wrong, and I think the situation we just watched, the interaction between our town administrator and the police spokesman is indicative of what's happening. Something is seriously wrong. There is no courtesy. People are bullied, they're abused, they're ignored. They're treated as if they're non-citizens. And people that live at the Swampscott Housing Authority feel that way too. I am here tonight because you were going to be talking about the ARPA funding, the allocation. The Housing Authority has been attempting to secure ARPA funding since last fall. We have attempted to talk to people on the board. They have ignored us. We have attempted to talk to the town administrator. And what we get is like yelling into a tin can. It just comes back in our face. Obviously, this select board, the previous one, and the one before that, have an agenda that totally cuts outside the original intent of this town. This was a wonderful town. And we cared about each other. We cared whether the police department was fully staffed. We cared whether the fire department had everybody they needed and the money they needed. We weren't so much into, let's take property and build condos or restaurants. Something is wrong. We have met with the town administrator. Our chair and executive director have put forward the needs of the housing authority. Everybody in Swampscott agrees, along with everybody else in the country, that there is a need for affordable housing. However, affordable housing is not necessarily public housing, and we are talking about public housing in Swampscott. We have needs, and because DHCD has not stepped up to the plate in the 60 years we've been around, and because the town has backed off from their responsibilities of sustaining the public housing in Swampscott, it's falling down around our ears. When we come to you for help and tell you we need funding, we need ARPA money, and give you a list of the things that we need, we're told we are not here to revitalize old buildings. We're not here for renovations. We want something new. We want affordable housing. Well, affordable housing is for-profit housing. Public housing is not for profit. And there are people living here right now, 122 units of Swampscott public housing that have nowhere else to go. And it's up to you as the select board of this town and the administrator of this town to listen to us. We've been treated like we're the red-headed stepchildren out in the backyard. We are offended at your behavior. We are offended at the fact that you won't even listen to our executive director when she lays out the things that we need. I'm sitting here tonight with my knee the size of a basketball because I have fallen in my walker on big cracks and holes in the street. I don't see the town of Swampscott stepping up to the plate and ever fixing the sidewalks or streets in the Swampscott public housing units. Doesn't happen. We exist on the rents and the money that we get from DHCD. We are looking to you for part of this ARPA funding. Lynn has, even though Lynn has much more public housing than we do, and some of it is HUD housing, not DHCD. They have been able to allocate ARPA funds to all of their public housing. We want to know exactly what this town intends to give us. We are looking for things that are necessary. We're looking for sprinkler systems.
Ms. Tennant, respectfully, I think I understand your point. I don't want to rush you if you have more things to say, but
I do have more things to say.
Okay.
I think that there is a problem with the moral compass of this town. We need to get our priorities back in place. You have an executive director and a housing authority board that care about the people that live in public housing in Swampscott, that want to make people's lives better. And all we're doing is bucking up against a wall.
Ms.
I'm not gonna name names, and I'm not gonna get into pointing fingers, but I'll tell you right now, my grandparents would turn over in their grave if they saw the way the chairman of the Swampscott Housing Authority has been treated, and the way that Mr. Fitzgerald treats the people here. The tenants
Ms. Tennant, Ms.
Association
Tennant,
has written 3
Ms.
times.
Ms.
We
Tennant.
have brought out and not one response. We have called you and no response.
Ms. Tennant, if you could please, you started talking, when you started talking to us in your public comment, you were talking about the disrespect that people show, and now you're speaking poorly of town staff and select board. So if you could show the courtesy that you expect us to also exhibit, that would be really helpful. I think Mr. Grishman would like to have
Yeah.
a comment on respond to some of what you said.
Yeah. Hi, Cynthia. This is David. I'm the liaison to the Housing Authority for those watching, and we did have a productive meeting probably about 2 months ago with the town administrator, with the finance director, with the chair of the Housing Authority, and with the executive director and myself, and we had a good, open, and honest conversation whereby additional information was supposed to be provided for us to review, and for an ongoing conversation to continue between the town and the Swampscott Housing Authority. To date, I don't. Maybe I've missed an email, but if that information is available, please send my way. I want to make sure that I'm as responsive and that we can continue to have these conversations. But to be accused that we're not having conversations and that we're not doing, we're not trying to communicate and collaborate is simply untrue. So please, Cynthia, send me that information, and we can get another meeting on the calendar with the town administrator, with the executive director, and with various parties, so we can continue to communicate and continue to collaborate and work together on improving Swampscott housing.
David, I thank you very much. I think this is a matter of perception. Your perception of that meeting is that it was productive. What we were told and what we were given, the information we were given from that meeting, was that it was totally non-productive, and people were very discouraged.
Considering that was the first conversation that all of us have had, where we all sat in a room and all looked to address this, I thought it was productive. Considering that maybe 8 to 10 months before, there was a shouting match at one of our meetings. So the fact that we were able to sit down and have a conversation, I thought was productive, because I don't believe that's happened in decades. So again, we need to take baby steps, and we need to build that trust between the town and all the related parties. So I want to be a part of that solution. So I don't think it's going to be productive to point fingers and what have you. Let's just collaborate and figure out how we can continue to work and move forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms.
We are looking forward that the new people on the board will have some input and will at least meet with the Housing Authority and listen to our problems. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Tennant. There's a public comment through email. Gina Bush on Highland Road asked me to read an email that she had sent earlier to the board. She said she's been following the select board meetings and aware of the discussion of the process and allocation of ARPA funds. As you're aware, the senior center staff was frontline working every day from the very beginning of COVID. In fact, when the town shut down and all buildings were closed, the senior center was open, fielding all calls from the community on where to find resources, delivering 100 meals a day to vulnerable seniors, handing out masks to all community members, developing programming for television to keep seniors engaged, and pivoting all services to meet the needs of the community based on the criteria stated in the last meeting and your goal as a board to show appreciation to former employees who worked tirelessly during the height of the pandemic. I hope you will consider the senior center staff. So that's that comment. Is there another hand raised, or is that still Cynthia?
Ted Dooley.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Ted.
Hi, Ted Dooley, 59 Puritan Road. Just want to say I was out in Harvard today and saw the sailing program and the paddleboard program that you guys just got up and running again. All the participants out in Harvard today enjoying their sailing and paddleboarding, and wanted to give your board and the town employees some praise on that. It's awesome seeing the harbor and the waterfront being used by some of the young people in town, and wanted to thank you for helping keep those programs afloat, and great work. So thank you.
Thanks, Ted. Bill Demento.
Evening, folks. Bill DeBenta, Paradise Road. Can you hear me?
Yep.
My question is, last week, Amy told Katie that the funds, the ARPA funds, could not be revisited for the ununionized people. Is anyone going to tell the truth about that tonight before you get too deep into your meeting? Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Any other public comment? Okay. So the first item on our agenda is, we're not going to do that tonight. It's a staffing announcement that we're going to make, but we're going to hold off on that because people aren't available. So we're going to move to the ARPA funding allocation process overview and timeline. I think Amy Sorrow's here, Director of Finance and Administration, to provide us. We've obviously had a lot of conversations about ARPA funding over the last few weeks, and I think we're ripe for a conversation about how, the process may be going forward for the remainder and majority of those funds. The remaining, whatever it is, $4.4 million. Amy can provide the details there, but I think this is to kick off that conversation and for the board to provide feedback on what they'd like to see. And I appreciate Amy joining us tonight and putting this together, given all the other work that you have to do with the end of year and everything else that you're managing. So thanks for joining us tonight and providing this information.
Yeah, do you mind? Yeah. Just scroll down. So just a little overview. The town is eligible to receive an award of $4,572,677, and we do have to have all of these funds obligated by December 31st, 2024. Thanks, Joe. The purpose of these funds is to ensure that governments have the resources that they need to fight the pandemic and support families and businesses struggling with public health and economic impacts, maintain vital public services amid declines in revenue, and build a strong, resilient, and equitable recovery in making investments that support long-term growth and recovery. I'm going to go through these next two slides pretty quickly just because they're exactly the same as the last presentation. These are just an overview of fund uses. The replacement of public sector revenue. This is what was utilized at town meeting as well as last week. And this is a standard allowance that can be used up to our total award or $10 million, whichever is lesser. And then the additional uses are to support the COVID-19 public health and economic response, invest in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure, and capital expenditures. Go two more. The restricted uses on slide 6. Yeah, thank you. We cannot use it to reduce net tax revenue. We can't offset our taxes with it. We can't deposit into pension funds, use it for debt service or replenishment of financial reserves, cannot be used for any settlements or judgments, and cannot be used for anything that undermines COVID-19 mitigation practices as described by the CDC. So for our project submittals, this is the timeline where we are going to have submittals for responses. I believe the VFW and some other outside organizations have reached out to the town administrator requesting to sit down to discuss use of ARPA funds. Our internal department heads have also been given a memo outlining exactly the criteria that they should be looking at to discuss any projects that they believe would be a good use to be presented for this purpose, at which time we will be evaluating the eligibility of this under the 4 categories as well as the subcategories that are outlined in the interim final rule from the Treasury. We'll do an internal review of those projects, similar to, I guess, the capital project. We'll do a project selection survey, project selection, and then we'll be presenting to the select board. There will be ongoing presentations to the select board. It's not that you guys actually don't find anything out till the end. Our target is mid-September to have these projects proposals and ideas presented to you. The eligibility, as discussed, is to respond to the public health emergency, to respond to workers performing essential functions, the provision of government services, and necessary investments. This next slide just shows some project examples. We do have a regional working group, as well as I am part of a national working group on ARPA funds and their uses. So these were things that have been discussed with other communities of an idea for uses. So such as vaccination efforts, improvements to public health, modernization of cybersecurity, environmental remediation. We are going to be rolling out a community survey within the working groups I'm in. We've requested copies of surveys that other communities have done. And as of the time that I walked in here, I've already received 3 from other communities. So myself and the assistant town administrator, Mr. Kane, will be putting a survey together to put on our website. It'll go on the banner, and we'll be doing plenty of outreach to make sure that residents and businesses are responding to it, so that we can get that community feedback, see what they believe, the businesses and the residents believe are needs and good uses for this money, and what they really feel would give the most impact to them. These screenshots are from Salem on the top and Lynn on the bottom, since they both shared with us their surveys and responses. And if the board's interested, I can share their survey feedback with you as well. Somerville was the other community that's already shared their survey with us. And do you have any questions?
So, Ms. Saro, other than the community survey, what other, how else can the community be involved with this process? What else are we doing? Are we having open meetings? Is there going to be a working group that would involve citizens? Thoughts there, or?
Yep. So right now we have the internal working group, which is our department heads, as well as key non-department head staff like the public health nurse, to come up with projects. We do encourage anyone in the community who has an idea to reach out. You can email me directly. My email is asaro, S as in Sam, ARRO @swampscotma.gov. And we really want to utilize these once-in-a-lifetime funds the best that we can, and in the way that makes the greatest impact. So anyone that has feedback can do so. We also do plan on discussing this with the board, as much as you guys will let me. And, I would encourage anyone to also come to those meetings and comment if they don't have an opportunity to do so beforehand. But we can definitely do open meetings with the public. And if the board wishes to do so, you can also choose to form a working group that's a hybrid of staff and volunteers.
Okay. And then just one thing for community outreach that I thought was successful with television visioning was we actually included a survey with one of the water bills.
Mm-hmm.
That actually touched folks that don't, that may not be on our email list or may not be on social media. So maybe that's an idea that could be implemented as well.
Yeah, I can definitely talk to the other departments who do regular mailings. I'll also speak with the clerk's office because I don't know how this, if it would time with any of our election mailings as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a quick follow-up. Will
Yes.
the survey be available in a hard copy form for those who don't have access?
We can definitely make it available in hard.
And then maybe that would be available at town hall or something like that if you came down.
Yeah, we're also looking at providing it in multiple languages as well.
Perfect. And could you do some sort of communication with the library so that if folks came to the library and wanted to use the internet to do the survey, that they would understand what they're asking to do and how to facilitate it?
Yeah, I'll coordinate that with the library director. That's a great idea. Thank you.
Amy, I have a couple questions. The finance, so we did have you did have a working group, there was a working group. The finance committee did have a representative there. And I know the finance committee's recommendation was to use the majority of funds for infrastructure. And they also supported hiring the consulting group to evaluate our diversity needs. Is there a plan that the finance committee is going to be involved in this?
Yes, so we'll be involving the finance committee, and if there are any proposals that include capital, we'll be including the capital improvement committee as well.
Okay, great. So my next question is, so last week, I think it might have been a little bit confusing when we were going over numbers that were being pandemic monies that were going to staffing. Now, I know that you and Sean decided what funds were going to what individuals at town hall, or town hall and other non-union employees. So one question I have is, if anyone that was a non-union employee felt that their compensation was not equitable for their service, do they have a mechanism to appeal what they received? How is that being handled?
Yeah, so anyone who wishes to bring up a concern with what they received, Sean has encouraged anyone to come to himself or the assistant town administrator to discuss it.
Okay.
And just to clarify, Katie, because I didn't want to mislead you last week, the question as to whether or not we could readdress these funds if it was voted down last week, the motion was if the inactive employees were removed from the list, we would not be able to readdress them. So if a motion's made to exclude any inactive people from the use of ARPA funds, you would never have a chance to give those individuals the money again. It does not preclude us from using it for the same purpose in the future if that's something that anyone wants to do. Because the inactive employees don't work here anymore, they can't perform additional functions to qualify them, if that makes sense. Your face looks like it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so the question that I was trying to ask was if we did not vote, if we reduced the list, could we then do a secondary list for non-union employees?
Yep, so you can do a second list, and I apologize if I answered a question separate to what you intended to ask.
Okay.
You can do a second list, like you can propose a whole new list, as long as those employees are active, where the motion that was made was to reduce it by inactive employees. Those people could never end up on another list.
Correct. If we
Yeah.
moved to take inactive employees out of the bucket, we can't put them back in the bucket.
Yes.
I understand that I understood. Okay, but the question I was asking was the latter, so thank you for clarifying.
Yep, so to Mary Ellen's point, if anyone did come forward and felt that they were missed or unfairly compensated, then it would
We
not
still have the
preclude us
opportunity.
from
Okay.
utilizing that, yeah.
So then, my next question is, because I went back and I looked at the, my information from contracts, while I was on the finance committee. And I looked at the DPW, I looked at all the contracts, DPW, police, library, and, town admins. And on town admin and DPW and library, I did not see a pandemic award in there at all. However, in the select board meeting that you had on 4/22, it was referred that they received a pandemic award. So I'm just trying to get clarification on DPW, what was their pandemic award, the town administrative assistants, what was their award, and library, what was their award? And is there clarity on what their awards were?
Yep, so everything that was negotiated in those collective bargaining agreements were negotiated as one-time payments. The police union was the only one that wanted to indicate that it was a pandemic response bonus. Because each of these bargaining units worked during the pandemic, we were able to qualify it under ARPA, but they did not negotiate it specifically to be paid through ARPA.
Because what it looked like to me, it looked like we used ARPA money to pay for the clerical changes, the actual changes to the contracts. But it looks like they gave up enormous, not enormous, but they gave up things in exchange of giving up items. For example, I think the admins gave up a day off. Was it a day off? There was a number of things. They gave things up, including DPW. They gave up they added a GPS tracker, and they added a clock, time clock. So when I look at that, I think, did they give up the GPS tracker, or add the addition of a GPS tracker and the time clock for that compensation, and the compensation was paid for out of ARPA? Or was there also a pandemic response portion in that? It's really not clear. And when I read the police received $1,500 each. So do they know how much they got? What did they actually get? Because it's a little fuzzy, and I'd like it to be a little less fuzzy.
Yeah, so all of the unions should be very clear on what they received. They've already received it, and it is outlined in their contracts of all the one-time payments that they have received. The funding source of that is the directive of the town to determine the most appropriate funding source.
Right.
And that was what we did at Article 4 at town meeting was.
Right, I understand the funding source. I understand the funding source. But what I don't understand is what the breakdown was, and do they understand what is the breakdown that they got for coming in and being on the front line during this pandemic?
Yeah, I can't speak to what they understand. I just know that.
What do you understand?
So during any of the negotiations that I was involved in, which I wasn't involved in all of them, there was indication from each of the unions that they wanted to be compensated for the fact that they were public-facing, they were working through the pandemic. So it was a factor in all of them. I do remember one union rep specifically saying that other communities were using their ARPA funding to give all their union members X amount of money. So it was something that was discussed through all of them. It just wasn't specifically outlined as this much is specifically because of pandemic response, this much is for concessions. It was just an overall number.
So again, we can bring back the PowerPoint that we put together that itemizes each of the cost items in collective bargaining. We can kind of go through the philosophy of the give and get negotiations that we've implemented over the last several contract cycles to really just help you and help everybody understand that when we sit down and negotiate with each of these collective bargaining groups, they are all different. They all have different needs and different wants. Some of our unions have steps and lanes. Some have provisions where we were looking to get more management rights. But we did try to really focus on using some of the ARPA funds to really support supplemental compensation for the staff that have really done extraordinary work. And with every one of these negotiations, we went in there with the intent of really using this contract cycle as a unique opportunity to remunerate our staff and just let them know that we really appreciate the work that they've been doing. But with every contract, like these are 3-year contracts, and we don't get many bites at the apple when it comes to bringing parity for personnel days. You know, when you have town staff or library staff that do similar administrative work, we want to kind of think about parity. We don't generally think that way with the police department or the DPW department. They do different things and they have different responsibilities. And so we use a different mindset when we think about that continuity of work that all of the unions do. That said, you know, all of the unions have different priorities. And I, as the town administrator, I don't go in there and think, geez, we're going to do a one-size-fits-all for everybody. What I try to do is listen to the members, and our initial conversations are, what do you need? What are you looking for? And, you know, I will sit down and I will present, you know, some of the town's needs for the DPW. You had mentioned GPS, you know, was helpful, helps us kind of figure out during the snowstorms or operations, you know, where staff are. That's a security and safety reason, but it also is a deployment of resources, you know, focus. That said, we have that detailed information and we can kind of go back over that. I generally think, though, Amy and town staff, finance staff really tried to focus on a very prudent and careful use of ARPA and general fund cost of living increases to help ensure that we had really good, solid contracts. I believe that all the contracts were supported, up with the exception of the fire department. I am currently negotiating that, and we've already outlined some pretty healthy remuneration for that contract, and it's my hope that we can roll that up to the board and probably non-public sometime over the next few weeks and see if we can get to closure on that. That would wrap up all of the town contracts, and I think that's been a huge amount of work. And you know, these are multi-year contracts, and you know, we'll have a couple of years of hopefully, you know, stability with those contracts.
I just want to make sure that people that were working on the front line of this, if we've made a decision that we were giving financial compensation to people that were working on the front line of this, that it is equitable or as close to equitable as possible, especially for some of the unions that are, you know, I see unions that are all female, and I question, you know, why their percentages are a little lower or whatever. And then when I look at it and I see that there's no line item that says pandemic on it, yet I look at the police line and it says pandemic, that's where my question is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So if you said you've negotiated with them and they understand that they are getting a pandemic bonus, then you answer my question. I just want to make sure that they understand that they did get a pandemic financial package in there.
Not bonus.
Trying to get away from the B word.
I want to get back to just to the process and timeline that you laid out. So when you say mid-September, I know that's the target, and I know there's potential meetings in between, but is that, you're targeting that for a presentation of, like, sort of the focused list of potential projects, or not the final list of potential
Correct.
projects?
That would be the initial list of ideas for the board to consider to create the ARPA plan. So it would be the start of that
Got it.
development, really. Initial list of ideas for the board to consider to create the ARPA plan. So it would be the start of
That's
that.
weird.
Consider so it would be
I think someone's
the
got a,
start of
that's
that.
weird.
It's still echoing.
Got a, that's weird. Does that need to be muted?
It's still echoing.
It's probably Joe. Needs to be muted. Is someone back there?
Oh, I think we did.
Okay. Thanks. That was really strange, because you weren't talking, and I was like, is she talking? And am I passing out right now. So is that mid-September? It's maybe hard to answer this, but like, what's the date? These projects need to be done by the end of 2024, right?
Yes.
So when are we feeling comfortable that, like, I mean, obviously we don't want to be finishing them on December 31st of 2024.
No.
So like, when do we feel comfortable that we need to be finalizing this process after, like, if the process is essentially like kicking off in mid-September, like, when is it ending? End of
I would
22?
definitely say even with a long stretch, we would want it, the plan finalized no later than the end of calendar 2022, because we do want to allow the time for these projects to be completed. One of the things that has been requested from the department heads is to give a timeline and an estimated time of completion for any project they propose. So that way, we know, the board knows, and the public knows that if this project comes out, it's going to have to go through a procurement process. We're going to have to do all this, so how long that timeline is. And if that's something the public and the board and finance committee and capital all agree is a priority, you could approve that
Right.
to move forward and then focus on remainders. So you don't have to approve the plan in one
Right.
meeting.
So I just want to share, in the event that we have to make a split-second decision at some point early in 2023, we have millions of dollars worth of public infrastructure that we can dedicate these funds to. But that's not generally what I've
Just like shovel
asked
ready.
staff to kind of say,
Right.
look, you know, we're going to be doing a lot of water and sewer projects. You know, these funds can go to those projects, but, you know, I would like to think we could inspire, you know, some really exciting ideas and really do some things that would be next to impossible without the thought of, you know, using these ARPA dollars and frankly, helping support some affordable housing or looking uniquely at the housing authority or other needs has been a top priority. And I shared that with the meetings that we've had with the housing authority and we've asked for lists of projects. So, you know, we are eager to engage the community. We want groups to really think about, you know, where are our opportunities to, you know, support important investments in Swampscott. So that said, you know, we're going to engage the community. We thought, you know, starting in the middle of August is difficult with vacation schedules, so we wanted to bring it into the first few weeks of September when schools are back in, and perhaps we can, you know, engage some of our younger citizens as well and have a poll and really try to get a few different engagement activities going that give people a chance to really think broadly.
So just to be clear too, I think that, so the engagement process isn't ending in the middle of September.
We're intending for it to end in the middle of September. It will be rolling out most likely mid-August and open for about 4 weeks for people to have adequate time to respond.
So I would suggest that that's extended
Okay.
at least a month or two, especially if we're getting down to a more focused list that we want feedback.
Well,
from
we
the
can do
community
2
on that
separate
list.
surveys. We can do an initial survey to see
So,
broadly what people want, and then once we have a more refined list, we can put that out for public feedback as well.
yeah, that's great. I think along the lines of some of the questions David and Katie were asking, I think it's more than just a survey.
Yeah.
I think that it's, again, making sure that it's available in as many places as possible. Also definitely dedicated meetings to this, as well as whether those are special select board meetings or other types of meetings. And I think that we should make a real effort to be going to certain places to make sure they have the survey and the information such as the Housing Authority, such as the veterans, such as, senior center. The paper forms are there, but it's not just dropping off a stack of papers that we're actually, and again, it can be us too, giving people information, having a conversation about it.
Yeah.
I think certainly there are certainly plenty of events where we could just piggyback some outreach too. So I would really encourage thinking outside of just a survey. And again, like I said in the beginning, I appreciate you putting this together in a quick time frame and then knowing how much you're doing. So it's not to be critical. I want it to be as robust as possible and
Yes.
and as inclusive as possible for as long as possible before the decisions are made.
I have one more thought too, which is I think I understood you said that Sean put forth like a rubric to department heads to say like these are the, this is a call for you guys to come up with ideas. If we could sort of put a similar memo together for the public and post it on the website so people understand like how to propose it to you. I know you said to call, but
Yeah.
if you put forth a rubric or a structure, that's gonna give people a jumping off point, and then somebody who might not want to do it, they're going to say, okay, well, I'll just fill in these blanks, and that's somewhere to start, and you might come forth with a lot more ideas that way.
It's a great idea. I also think we, to Neil's point, we have to go on the roadshow. We need to go visit our veterans. We need to go sit with our seniors. We need to talk to, our small business community. We really need to, go meet them and see them. I know that in this still linger of the pandemic here, the virtual stuff, it just matters if we engage them. And so we're planning on taking the show on the road and making sure that folks really don't lose that opportunity. We want to make sure that we really give people a sense that they can contribute. That said, I do think I've seen the survey work in a number of different communities. Our assistant town administrator and HR director, P. Kane, is really good at surveys, and I think we can use that to collect data from boards and committees and really, inspire some really good conversations with the select board, because ultimately it'll come back to you and you will help kind of define, how these dollars can be synergized. It's interesting too that we're starting the capital improvement process this week, because, the thought is that perhaps, we can use this year's capital plan to really excite, the most functional use of these dollars.
And the use of the dollars would also include revitalization of Humphrey Street, if that was the will. I mean, right now, we're talking about losing parking spaces in front of some of the restaurants. So if the plan is to expand outdoor dining and making that a permanent solution in town, maybe there's the opportunity to
Absolutely.
to bring some magic to the streets of Humphrey Street, and expand that outdoor dining and do that in a way that's permanent and safe and accessible.
All those ideas, we need as big of ideas as we can. Amy is very rigorous in terms of what gets through the federal designations of eligibility, but
I have to certify it, so.
my hope is the feds will continue to be more helpful over the next few months as we get closer to the timelines that they've set. We've got to get these dollars into the economy, and we want to keep faith with that. But I don't certainly want to do the same old. I would love to see other benefits come to life.
Okay, great. Any more comments on that? Thank you, Amy, for putting that together. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the select board and board and committee handbooks, as well as the code of conduct revisions. The previous select board approved select board handbook, board and committee handbook, and a code of conduct in the spring. The select board handbook had been reviewed by town council, and we are awaiting comments on the other two, which we now have, and actually additional comments on the select board handbook. So this, I'm considering a first read of these revisions and wanted to review them and hopefully, approve these red lines, the red lines of these handbooks at a meeting in August at our second read. So I do not intend to go through page by page, but I'm also happy to, go, if people had a chance to review them, we can go to certain comments and discuss. And if people haven't, then you can review them and we can discuss at our next meeting where we hopefully approve them. So I don't know how much you've looked at them and if there are any questions.
I do have one question about public comment.
Okay.
Section G1. So is it?
Which,
I'm sorry, the select board handbook. Chapter. Oh, this is.
Actually, let me,
There's no page numbers, so that's not helpful.
let me open this up.
Chapter 3, G, citizen participation, 1. So it was listed as resident comment, but now it is public comment. So is the idea that any member of the public could participate regardless of whether they are Swampscott resident or not, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to be clear.
Why did we go from resident to public?
I think originally it was resident and KP changed it to public.
Yeah,
And I think that's because
First Amendment rights.
yeah, it
Yeah,
can't be
First
just,
Amendment
it can't be just resident comment, it has to be public.
Good to know.
Yeah, all the red lines, but for one comment that I think I pointed out in the email to you, that was, all of this is language that KP provided,
okay.
yeah. And most of it's clarifying, but, any other questions? Okay, thanks for looking those over, and then hopefully we can approve those at our next meeting. Next item is,
I'm sorry, could we take the appointments out of order just because we have a couple of folks?
oh, sure, yeah, good, thank you, sorry. The next, we're gonna take, if the board will indulge, we're gonna take take some items out of order and do these committee appointments,
Let's do it.
if that's okay?
Yep.
So we have Conservation Commission, new appointment, Richard Simmons, and also Solid Waste Advisory Committee, new appointments for Kathy Mikk and Alix Smullin. Looks like some folks are here potentially for these. I thank you for coming, and I apologize for making you wait.
So,
John,
yeah, I've had a chance to speak with each of these individuals. They are all eminently qualified. They all have, I think, an extraordinary commitment to public service, and all could be serving in federal appointments and many levels. We're fortunate to have, a lot of extraordinary citizens. So Richard Simmons is here. And Richard has spent some time helping Swampscott in any number of capacities. I would welcome you, Richard, to say a few words or, share a little thought or two about, how you would like to use your position at the Concom, or anything that you really want to accomplish as a member of that really important regulatory board.
Thank you, Sean. I am new to the Conservation Commission. I have never served on that board, although I was a member of the Board of Assessors in the town of Lynnfield and the assessing manager for the town of Belmont, North Reading, and Lynnfield at separate periods of time. So I'm very familiar with municipal government and how it works. I was asked by Tony Brandowitz, who's the chair of the Conservation Commission, if I'd consider being a member. I've been active on the Swampscott Conservancy for a couple of years. I'm on the board, and I'm very interested in giving access of public land to people and getting them to start using it and start enjoying it. Swampscott's very limited in the amount of public land they have, and Tony, on the conservation, on the Conservancy, has been very good about expanding our trail system into the city of Salem, which we're trying to do with the Conservancy. Anyways, that's some of my background. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have no questions. I just say thank you for volunteering, and it sounds like you're bringing a wealth of experience and knowledge to the position, so
I hope to.
thank you.
Thank you.
So Kathy? I'm sorry. Alex?
No, they're not.
Sorry.
Nope.
Yeah, we don't
They're
have
not here.
I know.
You're for two.
Did you want to go on a committee?
Yeah, are you interested in volunteering for the
We
town
can
of
do it right
Swampscott?
now.
We can get you started.
You know, I did have a question, Ms. Simmons. So, I get a lot of feedback from people saying how hard it is to get their application in to be on a committee and getting feedback, but you didn't have any challenges with that because...
No, because Tony was very familiar with me, because I'd served on the Swampscott Conservancy for a few years, and she knew my background as a real estate appraiser and as an assessor.
Mm-hmm.
She knew that I knew the ins and outs of town government, knew how it operated, and it seemed like a good match for her. So she actually approached me and asked me to become a member, and I was more than willing to because I've served on a lot of committees before.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
She beat me to the punch because I was looking for him for something else, but.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so I did have an opportunity to speak with Kathy, Mikk, and Alix Smullin. Both, frankly, are some of the most extraordinary people I've had a chance to meet. They're not here tonight, unless they're online.
No.
I believe so. Kathy is an attorney who has spent her career working in public health and has worked in a number of important regulatory positions with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. She has a degree in law from New York Law School and has worked in a number of very professional, data-driven positions. I think she'll bring a whole host of skill sets to the Solid Waste Committee. I did try to lobby her to think about the Board of Health or some other opportunities to use her experience in healthcare, but she assured me that she would like to do some trash talking. So I have really wholeheartedly endorsed her recommendation. I also spoke with Alix Smullin. I've known Alix for the last 5 years that I've been here. She has been very, very active in local government. She has served in elected office in Swampscott, but also was the chief of staff to a lieutenant governor. She has immense organizational skills and abilities. I, again, tried to persuade her to do any number of other things for the town, but she said she would like to trash talk too. And so both of these individuals, I think, will bring a great deal of analytical and project management skills to a committee that really is helping Swampscott figure out how to take more responsibility for the trash we generate and the regulatory goal of getting more of our waste stream to a better purpose. We all know that the state has a 2030 plan to close all state landfills, and even though we've made some significant progress as a community, there's still much work for us to do to think about organics, to think about glass and other materials that don't find their way to a repurpose. With that, certainly we could see if we can reschedule and have these individuals come back before the board, or you can make these appointments. I would love to have them come back because I do think they would inspire others to really think more critically about the responsibilities we all have to better manage our waste.
Well, they will be at the farmer's market this August. because solid waste is going to have a table there to start educating people on what is recyclable and what's not recyclable. They'll have recyclable quizzes and games and stuff like that, but clearly, this solid waste committee is the committee that you really want to get onto.
It's interesting to me, usually trash committees aren't that popular, but this one is turning out to be pretty popular. Both were very interested in the idea of having some trashy music at the farmer's market too, so you might,
I didn't hear that.
you might get some,
I'll call them, seeing how I am the advisor,
yeah,
the liaison to
there
that.
may be some compost bin raffles and trashy music.
Yeah.
So motion to approve.
I'm sorry, I just have
Go
one
ahead.
more question. And this is not a reflection on these three individuals. I hear from the town administrator that they're overly qualified for these positions, but I just want to be clear about the process for which they came to these positions. So are there other folks that applied for the position, and this was,
Yes.
and these were vetted, and they
Yes.
decided these were the
Yep.
most qualified?
These are the
Just wanna
ones
be
that I
clear about
actually
that.
thought were gonna be best able to continue the extraordinary progress that these committees have been making. And also, I think, there's a fitness as well that I use to determine, where we need these individuals, even though there were a couple of other committees that I thought some of these individuals could help us with, perhaps even positions. After sitting with each of them, I was able to figure out, that these positions would be the best.
So if there's other folks trying to volunteer for these
Yep.
committees, which now would be full, are their applications being kept on record somewhere so that we can
Yeah.
go back and pull them
So
for other?
I would suggest to anybody that wants to apply for a committee, just show up. Show up in the Zoom meetings or show up. And, you don't have to be a fully participating member of a committee to contribute. Many of our citizens just like to help, and every one of our committees can use some help. And we've encouraged our chairs to really think about shifting into non-voting positions if we have folks that want to audit some committees or spend some time just working on an ad hoc committee. We can get the experience. We don't want to turn anybody away from public service. There's a role for everybody in helping Swampscott move important things forward.
Thank you.
So based on what Katie's saying, I do at some point in the near future, I would like to maybe have like a little subcommittee or just a couple of us sit down and get really clear on what the whole process is. Now, I do know that we've got it in the handbook that we were just looking at here, but I don't think it's detailed enough. And what you find is, you find people going online, putting in an application, and not getting a phone call back, not getting on the list, and yet people are getting on committees. So I just think we have to have some type of a better process, and then also reevaluate some of our committees as far as, so I'm asking the question on Disability Commission. We have 9 spots available, and I think maybe that committee, that's too much for that committee. 'Cause
Agreed.
we're having a hard time getting a quorum. If we can drop down on a couple committees. So Neil, if sometime in the future,
Yeah.
we can just take a peek at that.
No, I think it's necessary, and I mean, it's been an issue forever since I've been involved
Yeah, so we
in
can-
town stuff,
we can get it
which
done.
is too long to say.
And Mary Ellen, I'm happy to
I agree.
to assist in that
Yeah,
in
that'd
that
be
role.
great.
So yeah.
And I agree, Sean, I think people should be encouraged to go to meetings and participate with committees, on committees, with committees that they're not on. Most committees' meetings are not as formal as ours, and it's more of a conversation, and voting doesn't happen a lot in a lot of meetings, that they're just trying to do things, and so they always can use more help. It's how I started getting involved in town. I was involved in one committee for, I think, 1.5 years before I actually became a member of that committee, but I don't even know if we ever voted on anything, so it didn't really matter. But I also agree, it's important to keep track of these things, make sure the people that have applied for these committees are being notified that it's full, you know, that their application is still on file, so they understand that it's still there. And we also, I think, you know, when we last had this conversation, I think all of those applications on file, we need to refresh that.
She,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Diane's
because,
doing that right.
yeah, just
Yeah,
because
so
it's,
I tested it today,
yeah,
because I wanted to see how hard is this, so I went online and I found how to do it, which I did it very quickly, and I sent in my application, and I got an email back in like an hour and 15 minutes.
that's great.
So, and then I withdrew my request for the committees. So the process, that part of the process seemed to go really well, but then the next part, we've just got to, I think, iron that out, how to get to the next part.
Yeah,
It's really one of the most important things that we do, you know, in addition to policy, is really engaging with our volunteers. So if it's the most important thing that someone can give is not money, it's their time. And come one, come all, is what I have to say. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
and two, if we could, if there are applications on file, Diane, for committees and boards, if you could, I'm sure you do this, so I apologize, but if you could email the head of the committee or board to let them know the individual's name so they could reach out and sort of draw them in. That's good. Perfect.
Yep, done.
Done. Check. Excellent.
all right, so with that, I'd entertain a motion.
Yeah, sure.
Back to you
So,
guys.
yeah, so I'll have a motion to approve Richard Simmons as a member of the Conservation Commission, and a motion to approve Kathy Mikk and Alix Smullin to the Solid Waste Advisory Committee.
And just, Richard Simmons is for a 3-year term, and Kathy Mikk and Alix Smullin are for 1-year terms each.
As amended.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
Simmons.
much.
Great. So, last on our agenda, other than consent agenda, is DCR management of Kings Beach. Sean is interested in engaging with DCR on the possibility of turning over the responsibility of our portion of Kings Beach to DCR, and so Sean, I'll let you elaborate on that process.
I think, you know, for some time since the 1970s, the town has taken over the management of our portion of Kings Beach. It's a linear, I think, one of DCR's, Department of Conservation and Recreation's, longest linear parks, with Nahant going all the way down to Nahant, all the way up through Lynn to the Swampscott line. And given that our seawall is starting to sprawl and fall apart, we've over the last few years taken the approach of bringing that up to a status of good repair, much through the help of the Capital Improvement Committee, Finance Committee, and Town Meeting. We've appropriated $1.2 million in major structural repairs, and we've completed those repairs. We have an additional $1.5 million. You know, so close to $3 million we'll be spending, bringing that seawall up to a status of good repair. And we'd like to engage our legislative delegation in the Department of Conservation and Recreation at this point, probably years before, you know, we would get the type of support to have this section brought back into the Department of Conservation and Recreation Management prerogative, just to you know, find out exactly what more we'd need to do to be a partner. Obviously, we have a lot of important conversations happening right now along the Humphrey Street corridor with the acquisition of the Pier 4 restaurant, and I think this will help just begin that conversation. I do think it's important that the select board, though, also, you know, have a leadership role in this. You know, we'll need the full support of our legislative delegation. At this point, it's Senator Crichton. At some point soon, it will be our state representative. As we look at the long-term costs associated with just the operation and maintenance of Kings Beach, I certainly think it's of benefit to the city of Lynn and the town of Nahant that DCR manages that resource area. I don't think people look at that beach and think it's owned by state or the town. They just think government owns it, and when one wall is falling down and the other is maintained and repaired at different intervals and cycles, I just think, it's gonna look like we're not managing that resource effectively. It makes more sense for us to work hand in hand with our state partners and frankly our federal partners to seek the type of investments that make that resource area extraordinary. We also are working very, very closely with state and federal partners on addressing the Kings Beach environmental issues. I think we've done a lot of work, perhaps some of the best work that we've seen in decades to really get to a solution. This letter comes at a time where there's a lot of regional collaboration, a lot of energy around trying to elevate that historic resource area to its rightful place as one of the best beaches in New England. That said, this letter simply just, I think, cues up the conversation. I would anticipate many more, but it's the right time, and asking the board's support for your signature and a vote endorsing this effort. This letter also comes at the behest of our Conservation Commission, our Conservancy, other boards and commissions. Tony Vanderwitz has been a strong advocate for having this type of partnership with DCR, and I know that we'll have an army of support from a number of our boards and committees. Happy to answer any questions.
So when State Rep Ehrlich began the discussions several years ago, you said one obstacle was the seawall. What were the other obstacles?
I think, there was a sense that the town had voted to take ownership of that, and we should just take the financial liabilities with that. The town had made that decision, and there was a sense that the state had enough financial obligations to deal with, and we should just sit with that. I don't know, I haven't reached out to Representative Ehrlich since she became the FEMA administrator, but I'm happy to give her a call tomorrow and get more information. I really do think, what has been presented to me was that the financial obligation of just maintaining that section of the beach is millions of dollars every few years, and that's something the town voted to do, and the state's, had a long laundry list of capital improvements.
So is that the unfortunate circumstances in the 1970s?
It is, and I think we have to own that. I think I think back and forth, at that point, it was conveyed to me that the state had kind of fallen down on its responsibilities, and the town was getting frustrated that we were seeing the seawall in Swampscott degrade, and we made an investment back in the 70s to bring our seawalls up to a status of good repair. As we think about, rising sea levels and the extraordinary efforts to kind of bring the entire Kings Beach area up to resiliency, I think the entire corridor is going to need a significant investment, and I certainly don't want to have the Department of Conservation or the state moving at one sequence while we move at another, and to me, I think we'll just continue to have this leapfrogging, issue with capital maintenance when it all could be seamless and all could be really part of a shared gem of the Commonwealth.
Can I just, I'd like to just ask if, we mention in this draft letter about, in the meantime, we'll coordinate with DCR and the other agencies on, water quality testing. That I know that's been an issue this year. That's been in the public conversation about, the inconsistencies with the signage and the flags and our testing versus their testing. And can you this is an opportunity to maybe if there is an update, to provide any conversations that you've had about that and ways to improve that system, you know, in the near future, or if it's been improved. I haven't been aware of anything that's happened.
Neil, thank you. I've had several conversations. Recently, we had a meeting with Senator Crichton and representatives from the city of Lynn and Department of Conservation, and we've talked about, you know, are the red flags enough? Frankly, I shared at that meeting that looking at those red flags looks like it's a day at the races, and I don't know if it is immediately identifiable that that beach is a hazard to human health. And whether they're red or blue or green, I do think we have to notify more effectively. I've looked at a couple of different options. There are signs that actually can present information that you can change on the fly. These signs, you know, there's a brand called SOFA that exists in other North Shore communities. I think it would be nice for Swampscott Inland and perhaps DCR to look at these signs so that they can be remotely updated, so when people walk down onto the beach, they are met with a sign that perhaps even can have an audio notification where it can speak in several different languages and add warnings if there's, you know, bacteria present that would impact public health. Because, you know, we have that beach used by so many folks that need it as a resource, especially on a day like today or tomorrow. And if we have any kind of rain event, that beach becomes unsafe for days. And, you know, as we look at, you know, notifications, we need to share a common strategy, because it gets back to good government. If DCR is managing the communication for most of the beach and Swampscott is the regulatory agency that deals with just the Swampscott side, we want to be on the same page. We want to have one agency that ultimately we can turn to and say they're responsible for helping to ensure the safety of that resource area. And you know, we've had conversations about getting into sync. I don't want to take issue with the flag. I think we can do better, and I expect that we'll have some recommendations on notifications soon that will help, you know, have more options and a more accessible notification system that will help folks.
Do you know if the Board of Health has been taking this up this year? I
do.
Okay.
There was a state regulation that was passed that updated the information and the timeliness of presenting information on the closure. And so Jeff Vaughn, our Director of Public Health, has had to update the signage for closure. And I've worked with our health department to ensure that we're compliant with that new state regulation.
Okay, it'd be great to have, I think, maybe an update, maybe in a future report about how that's going or what the plans are to improve that, because I think everyone agrees that it can be noted.
On the closure, or just?
No, yeah, on the testing and the closure and
I
the
would-
coordination.
If we could have a meeting, not a select board meeting, but if there could be
Sure.
a town meeting to educate people on what's actually going on there.
And
what the process is, because it just seems like it's taking a long time to try to figure out how to clean that area up.
Well, it's a complicated problem.
Right, that's why,
you know, it's a $50 million problem, and it's cracked through clay pipes. It's not complicated in the sense that, you know, flushed twice. It's all, you know, leaching into the Stacy Brook culvert. And so in order to address that problem, we need to sleeve all of the pipes, and we still won't be able to guarantee that surface runoff from dogs or birds won't impact the bacteria content that would shut that beach down. And so we've got to kind of figure out how to get a few other treatment programs, or get a pipe that will help ensure that that beach will not have a surface or drainage impairment. But we've hired a company, they're studying it, and over the next few weeks, we should shortlist the options I'll bring that back and provide the board with a detailed update. Certainly happy to have ask one of, I think the Conservation Commission would probably, be a great committee to have a conversation about, the regulatory responsibilities we have with that. But I'd be happy to have a meeting on it too. There's a lot
Or
of.
maybe just
information.
Conservation Commission, if
present.
they have a meeting. But, so we just hired a new company?
No, we hired a company, probably going back 6 months ago.
Is that Kleinfelder?
It is, yeah.
Did Kleinfelder do a report about 5 years ago on it too?
They did.
So this is just, is this a follow-up or?
No, this is a separate contract with Kleinfelder to look at 6 alternative projects that of an order of magnitude that could address the bacteria loading on Stacy's Brook. And they're working to help both Lynn in Swampscott and the Lynn Sewer District grab a project that we could ultimately take up to the state and say, this is the project that we believe will help address the impairments to Kings Beach. We've received $5.3 million, much to the extraordinary leadership and help of Senator Crichton and Representative Ehrlich. These funds are being used to fund a small portion of this study. I'm begrudged to, simply just use these dollars to continue to sleeve pipes that I know will not solve this problem in our generation. It's gonna take us decades to sleeve pipes neighborhood by neighborhood that rip through neighborhoods and communities. We're gonna have to do that work, but I frankly, I want the state and the federal government to give us the same investment other areas have received to the tune of, $40 or $50 million. And I want to solve that problem over the next few years as opposed to the next few decades.
Okay.
Am I allowed to ask a question? So I'm Liz.
Sure, please, if you can get a microphone or come to this microphone, that would be great.
Oh, okay. So I'm Liz Smith, and I live on Hardy Road, and I just have a question. I think it's great to be thinking about Kings Beach, and especially to be coordinating with DCR so that it's perceived as one long beach and not sections of beach. My understanding is that the Lynn section, I don't know about Nahant, but the Lynn section is tested daily in the summer, but we only test our section weekly. So is there any consideration to making that consistent, since it's more under our control right now, in addition to improving the signage so that there's consistency of signage along the beach as well?
Liz, I appreciate those concerns. I have had a few conversations with our health department about the daily tests, and generally the thought is after a rain event, it's important to test, and the frequency, we do have dry weather impairment days, and we know that DCR is testing at that same location, and we can use that data too. It's a little bit of belts and suspenders. We do test our other beaches on that same day, and certainly I'm happy to bring that back to my health department team, and we can talk a little bit about, is that data going to give us more actionable information than the DCR data? And I don't think it will, but that's where we could collaborate essentially, because they're testing it and we're testing it. And
They're on one side and we'd be on the other side.
that's right. You could step in the middle and take that test. Because at the end of the day, if either one of them are loaded, that beach gets shut down. And so for me, it's like, this is not North and South Korea here. This is one beach. Whatever comes out of both of those pipes impacts the entire beach. And it doesn't make a whole lot of common sense to me that we have the cost of 2 different agencies testing the same location.
But
With
we're
that said-
regulatory, we're obligated to, right?
We are.
Yeah.
So are we, that's sort of like the obvious dumb question is like, if they're testing every day, I know we're obligated to test, and we're testing however, maybe we're doing the minimal amount or whatever it is, but it doesn't seem like there's anything stopping us from putting a notification up when we know the results of the test in Lynn. So we could certainly, and if we have to qualify that somehow as like, this is, no swimming because of a test by DCR or something like that, a different sign.
Yeah.
It almost seems like we would have daily testing, just because
We
there
effectively.
are entrances to that, there are entrances to our beach that aren't, where you see the flags, to your point, the flags aren't great anyways, but they're down the way. So,
We now have red
I'm
flags.
sure people have thought
So
about
we're
that.
putting up red, when we see their red flags, we put up our
Okay.
red flags. And
Good.
so they're, we're parroting
That's
some of
great.
those behaviors, but, yeah.
Improvements to be made.
It's a good point. I'll look into that and, I'll report out at our next meeting.
Okay.
All right, great.
So there's a draft letter that Sean has put together. It's was revised and sent out today. I don't know if people had a chance to reread it. If there are any comments on it. I had a couple little typo things, but other than that, I don't know if anyone has any substantive comments on the letter. Sean, if you could just, it's just a nitpicky thing, but just, we have 1.2 million and then just have 1.5 million written out the same way, or, just to
Yep.
have it consistent. And then I think there's a double period there, but maybe you remove that
There's
On
a
the-
double comma too in the first sentence of the
in a,
paragraph.
in a double comma in the first sentence on the second paragraph. So I think,
And double, yeah, I thought we
I think you
caught
got,
a
I
few of
think
those, but.
they may be in the electronic
We
version,
will-
correct?
We will get those Scrivener errors. What I was going to suggest is if I could get the board's authorization to affix your electronic signatures and make any Scrivener corrections that are needed. I will send out a final proof to the select board prior to sending it off, and I was going to reach out to Select Board Member Spelios and just get his concurrence that he would be okay with that.
So why don't we,
Make a motion.
yeah, but just for open meeting law purposes, David and Katie, do you want to be, you can send the final draft to them for
Sure.
approval, and you can
Perfect.
sign off on it? And then, yeah, I'll entertain a motion to approve the letter with the conditions as Sean stated, and to also approve affixing our electronic signatures onto the letter.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thanks, Sean. Thanks for
Thank
doing
you.
that.
Yep.
Okay, that leaves our consent agenda, which is just the meeting minutes for June 29th and July 13th. I'd like to request, actually, that we remove the June 29th minutes from the consent agenda, just because when I was reviewing them, I had enough comments that I wanted to take another look.
I also have some comments on the 13th.
Okay, do you want to just put
On
off
7:13?
approving these minutes, or are they?
No, it's quick.
They're minor? Sure,
Yeah.
okay. So maybe if it's okay with you all, we approve the July 13th minutes tonight, and then we'll put the June 29th back on the consent agenda for our meeting in August.
So is it okay if I comment on the
Of course, yeah.
July 13th one?
Yeah, sorry.
So I think the thing I wanted to comment on was in section 2 on the utilization of ARPA funds. I think the motions are out of order in the back. I think the motion in the final paragraph should be before the motion that passed. If you could just swap that to be above that.
Right, there was a motion made by, Peter made the motion, and then Mary Ellen amended it, right?
Right.
And then that motion failed,
Right.
amended, and then the full motion passed unanimously.
Correct.
So that's, yeah, I agree with that.
That's all.
Great.
I have a quick question while we're talking about minutes.
Yep.
We need to approve executive session minutes, and we've been having executive sessions since April without any minutes. So I just want to get those going so we can approve them and they can.
You gotta approve those in a duly posted executive session, and then you determine when it would be appropriate to release.
Right, I just want to,
Sure,
I don't want
Keep it on the
to
radar.
do it in, 24 months from now.
gotcha.
Yeah, no, we're backlogged for sure on executive session minutes, I agree. So I think we'll have to review those and
Approve them and then put them in the safe.
figure out which ones. Thank you for bringing that up, I appreciate it. So,
So motion to approve.
thank you.
The minutes of 7:13 as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Town administrators report.
Sure. So, really want to just recognize Danielle Strauss and members of our Recreation Department for all the work over the last few weeks to get the stand-up paddleboard program stood up. We have a full roster of young citizens that are enjoying the harbor, and it really is great to have an opportunity to run a program. It gives us a lot more flexibility. I would anticipate you're going to hear more about other opportunities to enjoy that program now that we have the boards, and staff are really excited about just getting out there and utilizing the boards. I have a couple of department heads that are going to potentially race, so if any select board members wants to get out there, there might be some bragging rights.
Put our horse in the race.
There was a wonderful volunteer appreciation brunch last week at our Council on Aging. In future years, certainly we'll be looking to invite the Select Board. I think this is a great opportunity for us to just recognize members of our Council on Aging, All Ages Center. They really, there's a lot of great work that is going on down there. I have met with Heidi Weir a couple of times over the last week, and she has conveyed to me that Max is doing some great work updating the kitchen at the senior center, and really excited about some of those improvements. Amy, who is sitting diligently over there, continues to close out FY22. She has been working diligently with Patrick Luddy, our town treasurer, on year end, and working with staff to ensure that we really focus on some of the capital projects. I have had several meetings with Max Casper, Marzi Galaska, Chief Casada, and Chief Archer on elementary school traffic. This is a serious responsibility to really look at neighborhood impacts. Currently, we're relocating the Stanley School students from grade 1 to 4 to the Blaney School, and so the neighborhood really is going to be impacted. And I certainly have been hearing from residents that have concerns. We are listening, and we are making adjustments to try to accommodate a number of neighborhood concerns. Unfortunately, we are going to have a significant short-term impact. I have looked at our ability, or the Chief Casada's ability, to make short-term changes. If the chief cannot make those changes without getting the board's approval, we'll need to schedule a meeting sometime over the next week. It's my hope we can do it over Zoom. I know that we've looked at having Chief Casada here at our first meeting in August, but the project team feels strongly that getting a decision sooner than later would be most optimal. We have a lot of logistics to coordinate. I've already authorized the signage and the equipment that we need to make some of these changes, but certainly, this is a major responsibility, and we want to get this decision made quickly so we can get programs in place and engage parents and staff with parking and logistics over the next few weeks.
So if I can just interrupt you, Sean, on that, just because, we've received some comments through email on this plan over the last 24 hours, and I think maybe other folks on the board, or maybe on the public meeting about these traffic changes. And there were definitely concerns, especially around King Street, and it seemed like the the project team, as well as the traffic engineers, were going to look into making some changes. So I just want to make sure that that's noted.
Yes, there have been.
Make sure that,
I did receive an
if anyone's
update.
listening from that neighborhood, understand that it's not finalized.
It is not final. In fact,
Yeah.
we're going to be likely making course corrections all along. We're going to have some opportunities, frankly, once we implement, to study it and make some
Right.
adjustments. And my concern is that we may have to make a few, and having our police chief or our public safety department available to make important safety decisions regarding transportation around the site will be very important to ensuring that we're going to keep that neighborhood as safe as possible.
And Sean, do we envision having, a traffic control officer on site or delaying, openings? I mean, are both elementary schools going to be, starting school at the same time?
I do, and I've talked to Chief Casada about making sure we staff at the beginning and end of school effectively. I've also talked to Chief Archer. Last year, we had both police officers and firefighters at the middle school, and we were redirecting some traffic patterns and pedestrian routes for the school. And so we're going to have to really put belts and suspenders on that first week. I want to go through kind of a trial over the next couple of weeks and just make sure that we understand traffic flow. It's every day will be different. A rainy day will be different.
Sure.
A snowy, there's going to be lots of things that we're going to have to be ready to learn about when it comes to transportation. Some days, we'll have a lot of students that will walk to school. Some days we may have a lot of drop-offs, and all of that will present different dynamics to deal with. And we need to be flexible and adaptable enough to address those needs as they occur.
And that just really makes the potential use of the Hawthorne parking lot during pickup and drop off just that much more important.
To that end too, I have had a few conversations with the Athanas family, and certainly they have been open to conversations about how they can best help. They have a business they have to run, though, and I can't make any assurances today that anything's in place, but I am in conversation with them about ways that we can work together to help protect public safety.
Also, could I encourage the communication to the PTOs for Stanley and Hadley? Because I'm sure we'd be happy to help facilitate information dissemination as well as feedback.
Sure.
So
Yep.
feel free to reach out.
Great, sorry, thanks. Just wanted to stop.
So,
Early voting.
yes, we have early voting occurring. So our town clerk, Jared LaLiberte, would like to present at our next meeting just to talk about September's primary and making sure that we are taking the right actions. The select board does have a prerogative to support that, and I think it's a good thing to make democracy that much more accessible. Certainly busy, with hiring. We've actually hired 5 new hires for the fire department over the last few months. The fire department's busy with summer camps. The chief has been meeting with the union and has been working with our safety protocols. We are in a period of immense heat. The department will be out with their fire truck at Stanley School, sprinklering folks this week. So we've got information up on our website about a cooling center that will be operational. I've had a number of meetings about the eastern coyote. These are wonderful animals that are part of our habitat. Unfortunately, we have people that are feeding them, and they get habitualized, or they get friendly with human beings. Many of these coyotes appear around Vinnon Square, and they have been fed by staff working at restaurants, and they continue to come back to those locations and they become problematic. There's not a safe way to handle that type of situation with wildlife. Unfortunately, what likely happens is those coyotes are euthanized, and it bothers me greatly that folks with all the best of intentions are trying to take care of wildlife that really needs to fend for themselves. They don't need human interaction. You can appreciate them from a distance. It's wonderful that Swampscott has coyotes. People should understand that we have rodents too, and these coyotes help us with rodent control, and they do help balance the ecosystem we live in. It's important that when they do see coyotes, if they are out in the daylight, that's a sign that they could be rabid, and that's a serious public safety hazard. And so I want folks to feel comfortable calling the police or calling our ACO, but generally, just the sight of a coyote is no significant cause for alarm. We all have to learn more about how we balance our habitat areas with our responsibilities. I do want to just inform the board that, you know, we are having more and more issue with rat and rat poisons. A number of communities are looking at solutions to some of these problems, including installing smart boxes. They have installed some smart boxes in Somerville, and I've reached out and talked to Dan Prue, our former ACO, and he has found a lot of owls and hawks in and around Swampscott that are dying from eating rats that have been ingesting poisoned. So, you know, those are the kind of bigger impacts that we see, and we want to all be more mindful. I've asked Chief Casada and our ACO, Scott Constantine, to work with our library, work with our senior center, and really just get the word out that we all can help manage these issues much more thoughtfully. I have reached out to town council, and I've asked them to draft a no feeding wildlife ordinance, and I would like to discuss that with the board as part of a annual town meeting warrant that will help us all just take some more responsibility for managing the delicate ecosystem that we live in. Lastly, I had another meeting with Mayor Nicholson on Monday just to go over the work that the Lynn Water and Sewer Commissioner are engaged in the city of Lynn. We have some, I think, tremendous leadership, and it's my hope over the next few weeks we will finalize that short list, and I'll provide a more detailed update to the board at that point. That's my report.
Thank you, Sean.
Sean,
Any questions?
Yeah, I had two questions. Question number one, you had mentioned looking at ambulance companies that you've met with. Would Cataldo, I'm assuming, is still, they're not under contract?
Cataldo is not under contract, but we currently have an extension that we're going to execute that will keep them under contract for a year as we seek to negotiate a long-term contract.
Okay, and would the ambulance company remain at 86 Burl Street?
At this point, we don't have a second location for the ambulance company, and that's one of the things that we really want to discuss with Cataldo.
Okay, and then as far as the coyote discussion is concerned, has the health director gone to the restaurants in Vinnon Square and had conversations with each of the managers? I know that we approve, you know, the
our ACO has.
ACO has.
We've put flyers together to give to each of the restaurants, and it was my expectation that we were going to continue to kind of work with staff to train them and to help them understand that, you know, their good intentions are leading to some very bad outcomes.
Okay.
Right, so flyers are gonna go out to all the restaurants.
Yep.
And they're also gonna try to put flyers in different, you know, boxes and food containers where people are picking up stuff.
Yep.
Just to get the word out. And it's my understanding that the police department is gonna help get some more flyers out there to stop feeding. And I guess there are some identified culprits out there that literally put out bowls of food.
Ugh.
And maybe they just don't understand that they think they're doing something nice, but they're doing something that could really cause, you know, these coyotes to have to be put down.
Yep.
So.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Sean? All right, select board time.
I want to thank everybody for coming out to Bentwater at the beach. We had approximately 900 paid attendees at the event. We probably also had, another 150 to 250 folks on the beach that just enjoyed the beautiful weather, the great music, and it was a great event. So considerable money was raised for the Fish House. I know Hadley PTO raised, was it 1,200?
Yep,
What was
the
the final
50/50
number?
raffle was $1,157 for us and to the participants. So we raised over 2,000 and split it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So it was a great day of community building and live music and engagement on our waterfront. So thank you to Bentwater and thank you to everybody who attended.
Thanks, David.
Wonderful.
Anyone else?
I do want to say thank you to the Swampscott Fire Department because tonight they did the fire truck spray on Stanley grounds, and I received some photos while I was here at Select Board. It looked like it was a great time. I think Jack and Stella really enjoyed it, so I know they're not the only young citizens enjoying it. So thank you very much for your time and energy in doing that.
And I just want to make a request to get onto the agenda. I just want to know where we are with the VFW lease.
Yeah, I mean, it will be on our agenda the minute it can be. I know Sean's been working to figure out the easiest legal way to create a new lease with them. And once we know that process, it'll be on our agenda, but we don't know, that's not clear right now.
So right now, town council's looking into whether or not I can sign a one-year extension as we try to figure out if there's a statutory requirement to go out to RFP, but I will certainly report back to the board as soon as I get clarification.
But I mean, as far as the statutory RFP, I mean, it's a veterans organization.
I know.
And the original lease that was signed in 1994, it basically had the town, the VFW conveyed 6 parcels of property to the town for a 20-year lease. And, just kind of, I guess hindsight's always 20/20, but it does seem that 1994 lease was pretty one-sided to the town of
I agree with
Swampscott.
you, David, and again, if we do an RFP, we'll write it in a way that it only allows a veterans organization to, respond to it. But, to me, it's just another, it's a state law, and I just can't violate a procurement guideline. And I've got a meeting, we're trying to calendar with all of the heads of the veteran service organizations that work out of the Veterans Center sometime over the next week, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we manage the lease, but also how we program some of the funding that we've recently allocated at town meeting, and how we've been able to negotiate with the cannabis business next door. So there's a lot of good things happening right now, and we just want to make sure the lease doesn't become a conversation that drags everybody.
Yeah, I just want to have just like all of us on this board, I think we just want to have a resolution to this as soon as possible. So if we could have an update, at our next meeting,
Sure.
on the town administrator's report or via email in the interim, that would certainly be appreciated by me.
Yeah, my hope was to have it on this agenda, but it's just not ready to. So my hope is to have it on
the next agenda. Yeah.
If they had released over a number of different lots, does it have to be a lease? I mean, is it possible to look into actually what had happened? And my understanding is they had conveyed, 6 or 8 lots?
Six lots, Mary.
6 lots, and they ended up getting a lease out of 6 lots. I mean, is there any way to go back and look to see how
That's what
equitable
KP
that
Law
was?
is looking into.
Okay, all right. Oh,
I
that's
don't think
good.
at this point, they haven't indicated to me that there was language in that lease that recognized that they would have a perpetual right to that property.
Oh, God,
With the current lease, did or did not have that language?
Did not.
did not.
It did. I read
I'm
it.
excited there.
Well, because a real estate lawyer, I thought, would jump in and
Yeah.
save the day.
All right, I don't have anything for select board time, so if there's nothing else, if there's a motion to adjourn,
So moved.
Second.
all right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.